Okay, so observing my mannequin, again, that keyword we talked about was proportion, right? Proportion. Now, understanding the proportions and what we're trying to accomplish here is going to be something that, if we look at the subject, we want to take note of the parts that make it up. If I look at this as the top of my form here, and this is the bottom of my form, imagining that the figure was standing, right? This part would be the feet, the bottom of the feet standing. So if I drew that on my paper, it would give me the opportunity to look at the parts, okay? So if I take this and I say, okay, here's one part, here's another part, here's another part, and here's another part. So just break it down as to where the joints are. And I look at that and I look at the unit of measure. So if I take my pencil and I say, okay, the head is this tall, and the torso from the shoulders to the mid-belly area is that tall. It's the same as that. So look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.5. Generally, the unit of measure, called the golden mean, is 6.5 to 7 heads tall, the human head. Now, this is obviously elongated a little bit, right? If this was an actual human head, the face, would stop somewhere around here, and the neck would be here, and the shoulders would pick up there, right? But for stylized purposes, for just separating the reality of the situation here with something simple like what we're looking at, we can use these units of measure as a way to get more accuracy when we start drawing. So if I take off, let me clear that. All right, if I take off all of those marks now, and I go and look at how I'm going to draw this, I would set up on my paper, set up a top and a bottom. Using the blocking techniques, and for me, I've got the photo, right, which is fine. But you can use your pencil. If you hold your pencil out with one eye closed and you say, all right, how tall is it? Well, it's a little taller on the paper than my pencil. So on my paper, I'm just going to make light blocking marks, establishing the height, top and bottom. Light little pencil marks. Then maybe I'll give myself a line, just a light pencil line. I'm using my arm to draw. And now what I want to do is I want to say, okay, from the top to the bottom, if I'm looking at 6, 6.5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? 6 heads tall, right? That's kind of the way we looked at it. 1, 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth. All right, let me put my marks back. What I'm going to do is I'm going to establish using a blocking technique, light mark making techniques. So I'm looking at the head, and I can see that the basic shape of the head is kind of like a circle, and it ends about here. I've barely done anything yet. Barely done anything as far as making marks on the paper. Just light pencil marks. I'm kind of establishing that angle that it curves in here. And then there's another circle shape right here for the neck. And the shoulders, I can see the shoulders are on a slight angle in mine. So if I establish that slight angle here, how much wider than the head is it? You can look and see how much wider the shoulders are. And then how tall is it? So I got the one measurement here. And then I can say from the bottom of the neck to about mid-belly. So this is going to be here, and from there to here is about mid-belly. So this, just blocking the basic shape. And then there's another circle. And then again, I've got how wide is that compared to that. So I'm using these proportions. This measurement is a little bit narrower than the chest area. So if I say that there's a shape here and a shape here, all right, that gives me the angle of the hip, at least the height of the hip. And if I notice that I'm getting a little bit too long, I can always come back up and make adjustments. So I can move this up if I want. I don't even have to erase it right now because the lines are so light and so faint that I don't have to worry about it. So there's my torso, there's my hips, and then I can start in with the other parts. I look at, see, half and half. Half the shoulder, from the shoulder to the elbow, is the same distance from the elbow to the hand. Half, half. So if you fold your arm in half, you can see it's half the distance. Same thing. Hip joint to your knee to your ankle. Half the distance. And that's a common mistake students make, is that they'll put together something and then the legs will be too narrow. Also look at the shapes created by the arms and the legs. They're like tapered cylinders, they're rounded shapes. So I'm going to keep going with this basic blocking technique and try to get the accuracy. I have the bottom line right here, right? So that's the line that goes across the ankles. And now, when I draw the legs and the arms, what I want to do is I want to find, where's the knees, right? The knees are halfway between here and here. So I'm putting a line here. The knee line is here. This is the hip line. Torso, shoulders. This is my halfway point. I've got another set of circles in here. And now I can flesh it out. How wide is the hip? You can see from here. What I usually like doing is taking my pencil and looking at the angles of the legs, or looking at the angles of the arms, the individual parts to the arm. One top arm is going this way, the bottom of the arm is going this way. So I'll kind of draw a light stick figure shape. Right? The shoulder is on the torso, the other shoulder is over here. And now the angle of this arm comes out this way, so that means I bring it over and I put it up against that shoulder, and I'll draw just a light. I'm going to look and see where the elbow is in relationship to the hip. So that comes down to about here. And then I look at the line here, I bring that over, and I draw it down to here, and I can see where that is in relationship to the thigh. So proportionately, the bottom of the hand is right about the middle of the thigh. So that's going to come to here. There's an elbow here, and that comes down to about mid-thigh, right? Because this is the mid-thigh. That's the end of the hand. Okay, there's the wrist. And then this arm is almost straight down, so I have my elbow line. So my elbows are always the same. All right, so here's my elbow line. So that's going to come down to here. Put that elbow line, and then that's going to come down to here. Got my wrist line, and then I've got the hand. So it's basically like drawing a skeleton, which makes sense. Now the angles of the legs. This leg angle is kind of from here out, and then there's the knee joint, and then the knee to the ankle. The line is on a slight curve, so it comes down this way, and then it hits the ankle joint. This leg to the knee, and then it's on an angle out to there. All right, so that's the basic foundation. So let me look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and a little bit. Now let's flesh it out. Now I'm going to start looking at a little bit of tightening up. Okay, I can see the angle tapers in from that circle. And I'm still not drawing dark. I'm just still lightly sketching it in. And I can see there's a surface plane on the face where it changes direction. And then this comes across here. I've got the sphere for the neck shape. I've got the curve to the shoulders. And I'm just going to keep going here, fleshing this out a little bit. So that gives me the mannequin. I can see a little bit proportionately. I think the shoulders are a little bit too wide. But that's okay. I can fix that. All right, I can make adjustments, and that's fine. Now what I got to look at is the fabric. Now what do I see as far as the fabric? Well, I can see all of these lines. Where do they relate to the form itself? I'm holding the pencil back here because, again, I'm just putting in light blocking lines. Fabric comes down, ends right behind the shin here, comes up, curves in. And these are just the folds and creases. Above the head, there's a couple. Goes over the back here. Okay. So I'm just trying to establish where all these folds and creases are so that I know where to put the values in. So again, those lines are very, very faint. So now when I start looking at the values, I'm just going to start, start shading. Looking at where the highlights and shadows are. So for example, if I bring this in a little bit here, I'll just work on shading just the head. So I look at the areas of shading, and I look at the highlights and shadows. I don't want to follow the shape of the form, and I can start off a little bit lighter and then slowly get darker. So you can see just developing some of the shading on the body. Now, when I look at the fabric, I'll do the same thing. What shadows and highlights do I see in the fabric? Where's the shadows? This edge is a highlight on the form, so I can come in and Just try to put a little bit of shade up against the top of the head. And I'm just using a technique with hatching, just lines drawn in one direction. It's a looser shading technique, but so I got a highlight on this part here, so shadows behind the body, and the shadow helps define the edge of the form. So you get the idea, right? Get the idea of how the light and shadow and the direction of the pencil marks that you're creating. But again, it's really just about getting those accurate proportions by using the blocking techniques to develop the overall form. And again, there are some things that I need to fix as far as proportions here, like the width of the shoulders are probably a little bit narrower, and that's okay. All right, but I can see that. I can see that from looking at one and looking at the other and how far I've gone with them. But overall, my size and scale is pretty accurate, so I'm okay with that.